Is she your wife? The question came from Marcus Reed, the security supervisor at Lakeshore Tower. My husband looked straight at the woman beside him and said, "Yes." He did not see me standing 6 feet away. "My name is Claire Bennett." I was 43 years old that night, and the woman wearing a resident badge in my building was Vanessa Cole, Evan's former college girlfriend. Her hand rested lightly on his arm as guests moved through the marble lobby toward my sister-in-law's charity gala. For a second, I thought I had misunderstood. Then Marcus looked from Vanessa's badge to the identification card in my hand. His expression changed. "Mrs. Bennett," he said quietly, "could you come with me?" Inside the security office, he placed a permanent access form on the desk. Evan had signed it. Vanessa was listed as his spouse. I was described as an estranged former owner who had moved away. Attached to it was an authorization carrying my signature. Except it was not my signature. It used Claire M. Bennett, a version of my name I had stopped signing after my Aunt Ruth died. Beneath the document sat a courier log from a title company and a list of dates when Evan had brought Vanessa into my condo after midnight. I did not cry. I took photographs of every page and called Nina Patel, the attorney who handled Aunt Ruth's estate. Then I returned to the gala. If you have ever been treated as though your kindness made you easy to erase, tell me in the comments. And subscribe, because what happened next was not about catching my husband with another woman. It was about discovering that he had tried to replace me on paper before replacing me in public. To understand why Evan believed I would stay quiet, you need to know who I had been long before that night. I grew up in a small Illinois town with my mother, who had been widowed when I was 9. She worked double shifts at a medical supply warehouse and believed sacrifice was the highest form of love. "People remember the woman who helps," she used to tell me, so I became helpful. I packed lunches, paid bills, fixed mistakes, and learned not to ask for much. Being needed felt close enough to being loved that I stopped noticing the difference. That habit followed me into adulthood. I built a career in corporate risk and compliance, where being cautious and calm made me valuable. At work, people respected me for catching problems before they became disasters. At home, those same qualities made people assume I would clean up anything they broke. I met Evan when I was 25. He was charming, ambitious, and building a small commercial design firm from a rented office above a pharmacy. He made me feel chosen. At least, that was how I understood it then. His family looked polished in a way mine never had. His mother, Judith, wore pearl earrings to casual lunches and spoke constantly about charity boards, donors, and the right circles. His younger sister, Lauren, was treated as the family's creative star, even when her projects needed someone else's money to survive. Judith called me practical. It sounded like praise until I noticed she used warmer words for everyone else. Only Aunt Ruth saw the danger clearly. She was a retired librarian who lived alone at Lakeshore Tower, surrounded by books and mismatched lamps. She once told me, "Being dependable is a strength, Claire, but the wrong people will turn it into a job you never agreed to take." When she died, she left me her condo through a separate property trust. With it came a handwritten letter asking me to keep one place in the world that nobody could claim through guilt. I never hid the inheritance. I simply never advertised what it was worth. At first, Evan called the condo Ruth's gift to me. Years later, he started calling it our opportunity. I should have noticed the difference sooner. The change did not happen all at once. That was what made it so easy to excuse. At first, it was small things. Judith would call because her property tax payment was late, and Evan would say, "It's temporary, Claire, she's embarrassed." So I paid it. Lauren would announce another ambitious project for her youth arts nonprofit, then discover she could not cover the venue deposit. "You're better with numbers," she would say, sliding the contract across the table. I would review it, negotiate the price, and put the deposit on my card. At family dinners, Evan accepted praise for vacations I had planned and gifts I had purchased. "You always take such good care of your mother," one relative told him after Judith opened an expensive bracelet. Evan smiled and thanked her. I waited for him to mention that I had chosen it and paid for it. He never did. When I corrected him later, he sighed. "Does it really matter who swiped the card?" It mattered to me. But in his family, asking to be acknowledged was treated as demanding attention. Lauren was allowed to fail beautifully. Every mistake became evidence that she was brave enough to dream. If I made a mistake, even a small one, Judith called it proof that I was too rigid. One summer, I paid for a family weekend in Wisconsin after Lauren claimed she needed time away from nonprofit stress. A month later, Judith mailed me a framed photograph from the trip. Everyone was in it except me. I had been standing 3 feet away when the picture was taken. Judith had asked me to hold her handbag. When I mentioned it, she laughed. "Oh, Claire, don't make everything symbolic. It was just the nicest picture." Evan told me to let it go. That became his answer to almost everything. Let it go because Lauren was overwhelmed. Let it go because Judith was from another generation. Let it go because Vanessa had not meant anything by it. Vanessa returned to their lives through one of Lauren's donor committees. She was newly divorced, well-connected, and always dressed as though someone important might be watching. Judith adored her immediately. At dinner, she praised Vanessa for arranging the flowers, even though I had ordered them, paid the florist, and driven across town when the delivery was delayed. Vanessa smiled at me and said, "You're such a lifesaver." The words sounded kind. The arrangement was not. She received the praise. I handled the emergency. Soon, Evan began attending donor meetings he had once dismissed as boring. He stayed out later. He changed the password on his phone and started placing it face down on the table. When I asked whether something was wrong, he kissed my forehead and said, "You spend all day looking for risks. Not everything is an investigation." Then he began asking questions about Aunt Ruth's condo. What was it worth now? Did the trust make refinancing difficult? Would I ever consider using the equity for something productive? I reminded him that Ruth had left it to me as protected property. He smiled as though I were being sentimental. "It's an apartment, Claire, not a museum." The moment that truly caught my attention came on a quiet Tuesday night. Evan walked into the kitchen, carrying 2 glasses of wine, and placed a thin folder beside my laptop. "I need a copy of the trust," he said. "What for?" "Insurance." "What kind of insurance requires the full trust?" His smile tightened. "You know how banks are. They ask for everything." I closed the folder without opening it. "If a bank needs something, have them send the request to me." He stared at me for a moment, then picked up both glasses. "You make simple things exhausting." He walked out of the kitchen. I stayed there under the yellow pendant light, looking at the folder he had left behind. My family believed I pushed paper for a living. Judith once described my job as checking boxes for nervous executives. In reality, I was a senior compliance director for a national manufacturing group. My team investigated forged approvals, undisclosed conflicts, false ownership statements, and financial documents designed to look ordinary long enough for money to move. I knew how fraud usually began, not with a dramatic crime, with a vague request, a rushed signature, a spouse saying, "Trust me." The next morning, I scanned every page of Ruth's original trust and stored encrypted copies outside our home. Then I called Nina Patel, the attorney who had prepared Ruth's estate plan. Nina reviewed the documents and confirmed what I already suspected. "The condo is yours alone," she said. "Evan has no ownership interest. No legitimate lender can touch it without your verified participation as trustee." At her suggestion, I placed a title monitoring alert on the property and redirected all notices to a private mailing address. I also downloaded our joint account statements, saved Evan's messages about the condo's value, and documented every unusual withdrawal. I did not confront him. Evidence loses value when fear makes you careless. Evan believed our lifestyle depended on his design firm. He did not know I had built an emergency account over several years, or that I had quietly carried our household through every slow quarter his company suffered. I had never used that fact against him. But I had records. 3 weeks later, an alert appeared on my phone while I was sitting in a conference room at work. A private lender had requested a preliminary ownership report on Aunt Ruth's condo. I read the notification twice. Someone had moved beyond asking questions. A financing process had started, and whoever initiated it believed they had the right to use my property. That was when I stopped wondering whether Evan was hiding something. I started preparing to find out how far he had already gone. The first person I told everything to was Nina Patel. She had handled Aunt Ruth's estate, but that was not why I trusted her. Nina listened without rushing to comfort me. She never confused kindness with reassurance. We met in her office 2 days after the title alert. Rain tapped against the windows, and a paper cup of coffee cooled between my hands while I explained the late meetings, Vanessa, the trust questions, and the lender's report. Nina did not interrupt. When I finished, she folded her hands over a yellow legal pad. A title inquiry is not proof that a loan closed, she said, and an affair, if there is one, is not the same thing as financial fraud. We need to separate what hurts from what we can prove. Her calm should have made me feel better. Instead, it made everything real. I told her about the vacations I funded, the contracts I fixed, and the family photographs I had somehow disappeared from. I admitted that Evan had dismissed me for years, and that I kept calling it stress because the truth felt harder to face. Nina watched me for a moment. "Let me ask you something that has nothing to do with the condo," she said. "If no document was forged and no loan ever closed, would you still accept this marriage as it is?" I looked down at my wedding ring. "No," I said. That single word felt heavier than any legal paper on her desk. Nina helped me create 3 plans: preserve evidence, protect the property, and decide what boundary I would keep even if Evan explained everything away. She contacted the title company's fraud department and requested direct verification for any transaction involving the trust. Before I left, she handed me a copy of Aunt Ruth's letter. One sentence had been underlined in Ruth's careful blue ink. "Keep one place in this world where love cannot be used as a key against you." I folded the letter and placed it in my bag. That afternoon, Nina called again. "The lender who requested the ownership report is attending Lauren's gala," she said. "Whatever Evan is trying to do, the event may be part of it." The gala was supposed to raise money for Lauren's youth arts nonprofit. Publicly, it was about scholarships and community programs. Privately, it gave everyone something they wanted. Lauren wanted donors. Judith wanted photographs beside wealthy people. Evan wanted investors to believe his struggling firm was backed by stable assets. And all 3 of them wanted my building. Evan had asked me to reserve the residence club at Lakeshore Tower because, in his words, it looks established. He expected me to pay the deposit, solve the vendor problems, and stay out of the spotlight. When I asked for written confirmation that neither the condo nor the trust would be represented as part of the nonprofit, he stared at me across our kitchen island. "You're turning a family favor into an audit." "I'm protecting my property." "From whom? Your husband?" He said it like the idea was insulting. Judith called the next day to discuss my dress. "Something simple would be best," she said. "Vanessa will be greeting the major donors, and we want the room to feel coordinated." I looked at the dark blue dress hanging on my closet door. "You mean you don't want me mistaken for family?" She laughed softly. "Claire, don't be dramatic. Everyone has a role. Mine, apparently, was to provide the room and disappear inside it. 3 days before the gala, Evan placed another form beside my breakfast plate. "It's just a property acknowledgement," he said. The language was vague, and the signature line identified me as owner rather than trustee. "I'll send it to Nina." For the first time, he did not argue. He simply picked up the paper and said, "Fine." His calm frightened me more than anger would have. On the night of the gala, I arrived carrying copies of the trust and Aunt Ruth's letter. The lobby smelled of polished wood and white lilies. Judith moved place cards with the concentration of a military commander. Vanessa stood beneath the Lakeshore Tower address, greeting guests as though she belonged there. Evan wore the charcoal suit I had bought him for our 15th anniversary. He saw me, then he looked away. Near the elevator, Marcus Reed was studying Vanessa's resident badge. I had no idea that the next question he asked would end my marriage exactly as I knew it. Marcus looked at Vanessa's badge, then at Evan. "Is she your wife?" Evan did not hesitate. "Yes." The word landed quietly. That was what made it so brutal. Vanessa's hand remained on his arm. She wore a fitted cream dress and a permanent resident badge clipped near her waist. Evan stood beside her in the charcoal suit I had bought him, smiling like a man welcoming guests into a life he owned. He still had not noticed me. Marcus did. His eyes moved to the identification card in my hand, then back to Evan. "Mrs. Bennett," he said carefully, "may I speak with you in the security office?" Evan turned. For 1 second, panic crossed his face. Then it disappeared beneath a practiced smile. "Claire," he said, "you're early." I looked at Vanessa's badge. "No," I replied. "Apparently I'm late." Inside the security office, Marcus showed me the permanent access application, the false authorization, and the courier records. I photographed every page and called Nina. When I returned to the residence club, the quartet was playing softly near the windows. Guests held champagne glasses beneath gold lights. Lauren stood beside the stage checking the program. She saw me and immediately pushed a clipboard into my hands. "The caterer says we're short 12 vegetarian plates," she whispered. "Can you fix it before the remarks?" I looked at the clipboard. Not my husband. Not Vanessa. Not the badge. The food. That was what she expected me to handle. "I'm not working tonight," I said. Lauren blinked. "Claire, please don't start. This evening matters." Judith approached before I could answer. She wore a pearl necklace and a silver dress that matched the table runners. A donor beside her asked, "Are you Evan's wife?" Judith answered for me. "Claire is a family friend who helped us secure the venue." The donor smiled politely and walked away. I stared at Judith. She lowered her voice. "Not tonight." Then Lauren stepped onto the stage. She thanked the sponsors, the board members, and finally, Evan and Vanessa, whose strength as a couple helped our family through a difficult private transition. The room applauded. My husband stood beside another woman, while his sister announced our separation to a room full of strangers. We had never separated. We had never discussed divorce. Evan looked at me from across the room and silently formed the words, "Please don't do this here." As if my reaction were the scandal, I walked toward him. "What did you tell them?" He glanced around before answering. "Keep your voice down." "I am speaking quietly. Claire, the business is under pressure. The lender needed reassurance." "So you gave him another wife?" His jaw tightened. "Vanessa understands these social situations. You hate events like this. That does not make her married to you." "No money has moved," he said. "It was positioning. Once the financing was approved, we would have discussed everything." "We?" "You would have signed when you understood what was at stake." There it was. Not confusion. Not one impulsive lie. A plan built on the belief that I would surrender after everyone else had already benefited. "Did your mother know?" Evan looked toward Judith. Lauren's nonprofit needed the bridge. My company needed liquidity. Everyone is under enormous pressure. "That wasn't my question." "You've always been the reasonable one," he said. "I knew you would understand eventually." Something inside me became very still. For years, they had called me reasonable whenever they needed me to accept the unacceptable. I handed Lauren's clipboard back to Evan. "I need 10 minutes. Judith watched me walk away with a faint, satisfied smile. She believed I was retreating. I was not. Back in the security office, Marcus opened the original electronic file. He showed me time-stamped footage from 6 different nights. Evan had brought Vanessa into my condo after midnight. On one evening, a man carrying a leather portfolio entered with them. Marcus identified him as a representative of the private lender. The access application stated that I had relocated and transferred control of the unit to Evan. Vanessa had signed beneath the word spouse. Then Nina arrived. She placed the forged authorization beside the trust papers and pointed to the errors. "They used the wrong legal name," she said. "The witness language is outdated. And this paragraph was copied from a generic marital property form. It has no authority over the trust." She called the title company's fraud officer on speakerphone. The proposed credit line was $650,000. It had not closed. The money was intended to support Evan's firm and provide temporary funding to Lauren's nonprofit. The file had been frozen because the lender could not verify me as trustee. Marcus pulled up another record. Evan had told building management that I had abandoned the marriage and would formalize the transfer after the gala. I looked at the forged signature again. Nina spoke carefully. We can prove false representations, unauthorized access, and an attempted transaction using a document you did not sign. We cannot yet prove who created every page. I understand. What do you want to do? Through the office window, I could see Lauren smiling beneath the projector screen. Vanessa stood beside Evan. Judith was introducing them to the lender. They were still using my silence as part of the presentation. I want to correct the record, I said. Nina prepared a short factual statement. Marcus agreed to verify the building documents. I asked the event technician to connect the security office laptop to the gala projector. Then I picked up the forged authorization and walked back into the room. I was not going in there to beg my husband to choose me. I was going in there to show everyone what he had chosen to do. I waited until Lauren finished thanking the final sponsor. Then I walked to the edge of the stage. Please put the security file on the screen. Lauren's smile froze. Claire, this is not the time. It is exactly the time. Several people here have been given false information about property connected to tonight's event. Conversations faded. A glass touched a table. A chair scraped the floor. Then the projector changed from Lauren's nonprofit logo to the first page of Aunt Ruth's trust. Evan moved toward me. Claire, step away from the microphone. Nina stood beside the stage. I advise you not to interfere. That stopped him. My name is Claire Bennett, I said. Evan Bennett and I are still legally married. Vanessa Cole is not his wife. And the condominium discussed with investors tonight is held in a separate property trust for which I am the sole trustee. A murmur moved through the room. The next image was Vanessa's permanent access application. Her face drained of color when the word spouse appeared. Marcus stepped forward. Building management received this from Mr. Bennett. It identified Ms. Cole as his spouse and stated that Mrs. Bennett had transferred control of the unit. I never transferred anything. The forged authorization appeared beside my real signature. Nina addressed the room calmly. I represent Mrs. Bennett and the trust. This authorization was not signed by my client. No credit line has closed. The file was frozen when the title company could not verify her participation. The lender's representative stood near table 6. Mr. Bennett told us he controlled the residence, he said. He stated his wife had approved the transfer. Every face turned toward Evan. He lifted both hands. This is a misunderstanding. That document was only a draft. Vanessa stared at him. Then why does it have Claire's signature? It was prepared for discussion. By whom? I asked. Evan looked toward Judith. Judith rose, gripping her chair. This family is under pressure, she said. There is no reason to humiliate everyone over a technical document. A technical document with my forged signature. Her expression hardened. You have always enjoyed making people feel small with legal language. No, I spent years making your problems disappear before anyone could see them. Lauren hurried toward the microphone. This evening is about children who need art programs. Her board treasurer stood from table 3. Was our nonprofit named in this financing request without board approval? Lauren did not answer. That silence did more damage than anything I could have said. I will not interfere with legitimate donations, I told the room, but my home, my trust, and my income are no longer available to cover unauthorized decisions. Evan's voice dropped. You're destroying my company. I did not submit false documents to your lender. We were going to tell you. No, you were going to corner me after everyone else had relied on the lie. The truth had dates, signatures, access logs, and witnesses. It did not need me to shout. Judith demanded that we continue privately. I looked at her. I spent years protecting this family from the consequences of its choices. Tonight, I am protecting myself from all of you. No one applauded. That made the moment more real. Donors whispered. Lauren's treasurer gathered documents. One investor asked Nina for her card. Vanessa stepped away from Evan. I removed my wedding ring and placed it in my purse. Evan stared at me. You would end 18 years over one desperate mistake? Our marriage ended when you erased me from it and expected me to finance the replacement. I told Marcus to revoke Vanessa's access. Evan's guest privileges would now require my written approval. All communication about the condo would go through Nina. Then I left. The consequences did not arrive with police sirens or instant court orders. They came through emails, canceled meetings, and people who no longer trusted Evan's signature. The title company closed the loan file and referred the authorization for internal fraud review. The lender withdrew. Two investors paused negotiations with Evan's firm until his disclosures could be verified. Lauren's board ordered an external review. She lost sole control of the nonprofit's accounts and had to repay undocumented personal expenses. The programs continued because the children had not created the deception. I filed for divorce. Under Nina's guidance, I changed beneficiaries, separated insurance, copied household records, and stopped paying Judith's bills, Lauren's emergencies, and Evan's business shortfalls. The suburban house Evan and I owned together had to be refinanced or sold through the divorce process. Aunt Ruth's condo remained untouched. Judith told relatives I had planned the confrontation to destroy them. A few believed her until they saw the documents. Others called to say they had noticed how I was treated, but never wanted to get involved. Their honesty came years too late. The hardest consequence was learning how many relationships disappeared when I stopped solving problems. 3 weeks after the gala, Evan sent a long message asking for one private meeting. He said he could explain why he had been certain I would forgive him. I already knew the answer. He had mistaken every boundary I failed to enforce for proof that I had none. Evan's apology arrived in stages. First, he called the financing plan temporary. Then he blamed his company, Lauren's nonprofit, and Judith's obsession with appearances. Finally, he sent old photographs from our marriage, as though nostalgia could erase documents. I agreed to one meeting in Nina's office. He looked smaller without an audience. "I never meant for you to find out that way," he said. "That is not the same as never meaning to do it." He rubbed his face. "Once the credit line was approved, I thought you would sign. You would not let Lauren's work collapse or my company fail." There it was, my compassion, used as collateral. "You were not counting on forgiveness," I said. "You were counting on my inability to say no." He promised counseling, said he would end things with Vanessa, and insisted 18 years deserved another chance. I felt grief, but no confusion. A marriage cannot be repaired when I needed security footage and trust papers to prove I still existed inside it. That was our last personal conversation. Afterward, everything went through attorneys. Judith said I had humiliated the family over money. Lauren asked me to keep funding the nonprofit for the children. I honored written obligations and refused every rescue request. Vanessa later sent Nina screenshots showing Evan had described me as unstable and claimed the condo would become his after a private settlement. The messages helped my case. They did not make Vanessa my friend. I blocked Judith and Lauren. I stopped answering guilt disguised as concern. An apology without truth, repair, and changed access was only another request to use me. 1 year later, I lived in Aunt Ruth's condo. I kept her bookshelves and the green reading chair by the window. The rest became mine: lighter walls, fewer locked drawers, no footsteps that made me tense. The divorce ended through negotiation. Evan sold what he could not refinance and rebuilt his company on a smaller scale. I stopped checking whether he and Vanessa were together. Healing was not a scoreboard. Nina became part of my life beyond legal meetings. I reconnected with my old coworker Tessa, mentored younger women in compliance, and created a small annual grant in Ruth's name with money I once spent fixing Lauren's emergencies. Marcus was still at the front desk. I thanked him for asking one factual question instead of accepting the most confident person's story. He had not rescued me. He had shown me the door I needed to walk through. That night, I hosted dinner for people who knew me as more than a provider. No one handed me a crisis. No one asked me to disappear from the photograph. The silence around me no longer felt empty. It finally felt honest, too. If my story reminds you of a time kindness was mistaken for permission, share it in the comments and subscribe. Walking away did not destroy my family. It ended the arrangement that required me to disappear so they could stay comfortable. For the first time, home was not a place I had to earn.